Hey, Dr. Amber here. Today's episode is part of a 10-part series for my virtual book tour. Yes, I am going on tour virtually, and I'm having 10 amazing conversations with people that I know and I really admire around the topics of overwhelm, overstimulation, dysregulation, all in preparation for my new book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, a practical framework for breaking the cycles of dysregulation and mastering emotions for parents and children. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This conversation I really enjoyed, and I think you'll get a lot out of it too. And also, don't forget to order your copy of the book. You can get it on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, literally wherever you buy books. Okay? Enjoy the episode, and we'll talk soon. So I'm super excited to chat with you. Thank you
Yeah,
for joining
I'm
us.
excited. I'm so happy for you,
Oh,
author.
I so appreciate it. And of course, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, but I'll just
Okay.
say, like, I was telling someone else this. Like, anytime someone asks me about business or marketing online, social media, selling things, I'm always like, look, I learned everything I know from Jasmine Chanelle. So you should follow her. Like, I can tell you what I do, but she
Yeah,
really knows how to do it for real. So I just wanted to like put that out there. You have,
I appreciate that.
and it has absolutely helped me in this process of marketing
Mhm.
the book too. So
Good.
I very much appreciate you. But well, first I'll introduce myself. I'm sure that you all know who I am. I'm Dr. Amber, clinical psychologist and author of the new book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, which I'm so excited for. The book will be available for everyone to read June 18th. So that's about how many weeks? I've lost track. Eight,
Yeah.
8 or so. I cannot wait. And this virtual book tour is celebrating the launch of the book. And so with this tour, I get to speak to so many amazing guests. And today I'm speaking with Jasmine. So Jasmine, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so hello everyone. My name is Jasmine Chanelle. I am a personal brand coach specifically for mompreneurs, and where I shine online is really helping moms turn their ideas into businesses. So I've been doing this now for almost 10 years. When I sat down and like counted everything out, first I was doing it informally for about 4 years, but for the last 6 years doing this full time as an entrepreneur, and I've helped a lot of moms launch their businesses through my Mom to Mobile program. So I'm excited to talk to Amber tonight. I'm so proud of her. She's been a long time client, so I'm excited to see how this book takes off.
Amen. Um, Jasmine, I really wanted to talk to you when I was putting this book tour together and I was thinking about all the different groups of people who could benefit from the book. I definitely thought about you and your audience and the people that you work with because I know what it's like to be a mother who is also interested in entrepreneurship or someone who is working to maybe leave their full-time job and move into their own business. And I also know how challenging it is to like be a mom, be an entrepreneur, but then also doing both is like this whole other thing. And so it made me think of this topic: how do we beat the overwhelm of all of those things while we're building our businesses or while we're working towards those things? And so I was just so excited to bring you on and talk to you about this topic. I just feel like that's probably something that you have also experienced as you
Mhm.
mothers to build their businesses and to market themselves, to sell their products. So I guess I would love to hear from you if that is something that you've experienced. I'm assuming so, but
Yeah.
tell me more about, is that something that you've actually seen?
Yeah. Yeah, so it happens a lot, mainly from two places. One is from guilt. Like we feel this mom guilt around if we're already spending a ton of time in our corporate day jobs or whatever other roles we play. This is one more thing that's going to take time away from our kids. So that's one area that it shows up for a lot of moms during the mom guilt. And then the other side of where it shows up is this loss of self identity, because we've had to put these ambitions on the back burner, or we don't have enough time in the day to work on it, and it feels like we have this part of us that doesn't get expressed through business when we have these ambitions. And so part of the reason I started the program stemmed from my own overwhelm of trying to figure out how to make this fit with my 9 to 5 job. I had a competitive marketing job at the time, and so on the weekends and nights I was actively working on this business, but I'm like, this is not sustainable? What is the bare minimum I can do, but still scratch this itch of entrepreneurship, and kind of slowly build from there. So that's kind of what I've worked on the last couple of years.
Yep. That you said so many things there that resonates for me, and also just makes me think of the moms who might struggle with this. I think one, the idea of how do you do a little bit of all the things?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
a good mom, you probably still are working your job, so you want to be a good enough employee to keep
Right.
your, and also you still want to explore this itch for
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship. Also, you might be a spouse
Mm-hmm.
and you take care of other responsibilities or other family members. There's so many things, and not to mention taking care of yourself, right? Like
Yeah.
there's demands, and I can just clearly see how that makes someone feel overwhelmed. But then also that mom guilt piece is so
Mm-hmm.
key. What I found is that mothers who feel overwhelmed, a lot of times there is this guilt or this
Yeah.
shame that's driving a lot of it, because if we're feeling a lot of guilt, if we're feeling a lot of shame, it's driving us to produce
Yeah.
more or sometimes or overcompensate to
Mm-hmm.
that. And so I just, that, yeah, I see that
Yeah,
a lot.
it's something that freed me from mom guilt when I was working actively with the therapist was she said, if you're not like a murderer or a serial killer, guilt is a useless emotion. So you're holding on to this guilt, but you're not actively causing harm. If you're not actively being malicious towards people or causing harm or removing yourself from your children on purpose, intentionally all the time, then mom guilt has no place. It's just a way for you to keep yourself in this cage from being able to do some of those things that you desire. And so sometimes, like you mentioned, the shame shows up as procrastination. It shows up as, researching ourselves into oblivion instead of working on the business. It shows up sometimes as our failure to show up in our business to promote it. Because we feel that deep sense of shame, it trickles over into the business side as well sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's, yeah. So I hope you are listening, taking some notes, because I think what she said is so key. And what I say sometimes too, when I'm working with clients around guilt, especially moms,
Mm-hmm.
I explain or I help them understand that sometimes our guilt is directly tied to these societal messages that
Right.
we have taken. And then you have to really look at the messages. Like, do I actually agree with this societal
Mm-hmm.
about motherhood? Do I want to align myself with how society or maybe even like my family members have
Mm-hmm.
pushed this idea of motherhood? Is that something that I want to do? And if the answer is no,
You
hey,
get to decide.
right, because the guilt is saying, hey, this thing you thought you should be doing, you're not doing. So you're doing, but you get to decide, this version of God or this way of doing things, is that something that I actually want to stay aligned with? And if it's not, you get to free yourself from that guilt.
Definitely.
Wow. So again, if you all have any questions, let us know, because we're happy to answer any questions tonight, to talk about how to beat the overwhelm,
Yes.
how you're building a business, because I think it's so layered and nuanced, this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and also the challenge too. Yeah. So I also was thinking, from your perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like I'm trying to think, what is, are there, what is the best way to go about this? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know about you, I have some thoughts too, but for someone who is maybe a mom, she's been a mom and she wanted to begin entrepreneurship or start building her business, what do you think is the place for her to start to ensure that she doesn't get overwhelmed, while also realistically knowing that there's a lot on her plate?
Yeah.
There's a lot that she's, what do you think?
Yeah. So the best place to start is by level setting expectations for yourself. Your journey as an entrepreneur, as a mom, is going to look totally different than the girl you see waking up at 5 a.m., drinking her 6 gallons of water, exercising before the sun is up, your journey as a mom starting a business is going to look totally different. So I think the key to beating the overwhelm is setting expectations that work for you. And so if this you're brand new to this, you've never marketed yourself, you've never made sales or had to do any of that, start by just deciding what is the idea that I want to go toy around with. Don't put the pressure on yourself like this has to replace my full-time job. I need to retire. I need to be a boss babe by tomorrow. That is the biggest way to set yourself up for failure. So I would say level set expectations on the front end. The other part of it is really getting clear about what success looks like for you. So in the early stages of your business, success may not be six figures. Success may be you made enough money to order Starbucks every day for this month, and you can feel okay about that expense because you're making an extra $100 a month in your business. I slowly kind of ramped up to my revenue goals. My goal in the beginning was to make $300 per month in this side hustle. What's the least amount of work I need to do? What's the thing that feels most exciting to do? Let me test this out and play around with the idea.
Absolutely. I so hire a maid consistently.
Exactly. Things like that. Being able to outsource laundry.
Yes,
Those things that you want to get off your plate, allow your side hustle to help you do that.
yes. And I think that comment too, like
Mm-hmm.
hiring help,
Yeah.
that also speaks to the mindset shift that you need to have
Yeah.
as you seek entrepreneurship that will ensure that you won't get burnt out and overwhelmed. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
there will be moments of overwhelm, but the ways to try to combat that before you get too deep in it and then feeling like you want to give up is, hey, how can I accept new levels of help? And maybe, or I thought that this meant I was lazy, or I thought that I'm not working hard enough, or, if I hire help, people are going to think I'm not a good wife or not a good
Mm-hmm.
mother. But I think it means we have to really shift our mindset around it. And Jasmine, when you said being realistic, like realistic
Mm-hmm.
expectations, I'm so glad that was basically going to be my response
Yeah.
too. So in the book, there is a framework which you all will learn more about once you pre-order your copy. Again, you can pre-order your copy now or when the live is done. Completely available for pre-order. You can get that at Amazon, Target, literally wherever books are sold, you can get it. But there's a framework called the PCR method. And with that method, it helps you to know the aspects that you need to be considering to reduce your likelihood of being overwhelmed and distressed as a
Mm-hmm.
parent. And I really feel like it's great for this audience because
Yeah.
one part of this framework is being realistic. That is what the R essentially stands for.
Yeah.
It's being realistic about what is actually happening in your
Mm-hmm.
life and learning how to radically accept
Yeah.
it. And so that point that you made is so key because I think when we think about entrepreneurship and business, we're thinking of it one way, but we're not in the fact that we are parents, we are mothers,
Mm-hmm.
and so not gonna look like the way that we thought. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna We're gonna have to think more creatively. We're gonna have to be more flexible. We might have to dial back some of the
Yeah.
goals. We can hit the markers a little bit smoother. And so that realism, how can I set realistic expectations
Mm-hmm.
and then radically set that this is how I seek out this goal of entrepreneurship for me is going to be so key in ensuring that you don't get overwhelmed in this process. Because what I have found is a lot of times we get very overwhelmed, we get very burned out, we get completely dysregulated by our friends and stressed out because our expectations are completely misaligned
Yeah.
with actually reality. So I think that was so spot on.
And I think it also you have to consider the age of your kids. So that makes a huge difference. Somebody who started their business, their kids are teenagers or, school age versus you having toddlers and newborn. That population, I don't know what made me decide to start all these businesses while pregnant with each of these children, but every time when they reach that 3-year mark, that's when I'm ready to tear the business down. But it's like, oh no, another one of my children became a toddler. And that's where the overwhelm comes from. So you have to be realistic also. And like you said, evaluating your environment, your transitions, the things that are happening in your life in general at the time that you're trying to start your business.
Yes, absolutely. Someone said potty training, potty
Right.
out. Like toddlers, period.
Toddlers.
Just I think that's oh, to like knock us down,
Right.
keep us down. Like, oh my gosh, but that's so key. You know, that was my personal experience too. I think I struggled with having toddlers. I still have toddlers. My
Yeah.
5, so I don't know if that's considered a toddler, but my youngest is 3.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I actually, what it made me think about is I think many of us watching this today are probably very ambitious, driven,
Mm-hmm.
goal-oriented women who also happen to be mothers. And
Yeah.
so it's really hard for us sometimes to scale back our expectations of ourselves or scale back what we know we are capable of because that just feels so, it feels so wrong. But I
Yeah.
think and we have to realize that this is a season of our lives where we
Mm-hmm.
want our expectations, where we have to do things differently in order to ensure that our mental health stays intact.
Yes.
So
The mental health aspect.
yes, so that also reminds me of another section in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So a part of it, the C stands for being conscious, and so by that I mean many times we find ourselves extremely dysregulated, completely overwhelmed, completely overstimulated because there's this lack of connection that we have with ourselves where
Yeah.
we are not paying attention to how we feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like sometimes this happens well before we become parents or even before we decide we want to venture into entrepreneurship. We just don't have that connection to ourselves to like know what's going on, know how we feel, know what feels right to us. Our intuition is off. So that can also be super helpful, like really being connected to this is the emotion I'm feeling in parenting, or this is the emotion that I'm feeling when I build my business. Because when you are connected to yourself and know how you feel, it can be a little bit easier to manage and cope with that versus completely being unaware of how you feel and what's affecting you and being completely impacted
Yeah.
and vulnerable. No, there's no protection there because you're not aware. You know, that I think that is so important too for mothers and entrepreneurs.
And I think it prevents you from giving up prematurely. So I met so many business owners along this journey who like, I tried to start this 5 years ago. I tried to start this 3 years ago. And not being emotionally connected to yourself will have you giving up on something that could produce fruit for you if you just set those realistic expectations. If you, like you said, check in with yourself, or I shouldn't be creating content right now if I'm overwhelmed and overstimulated. Maybe I should save this to when the kids are not at home. And so really being able to, like you said, be conscious about what is happening around you as you're trying to do some of these things will help you actually give your business a fighting chance.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think too, it helps you to separate, you know, just the legitimate challenges that are happening
Mm-hmm.
circumstances versus like internalizing this as a personal
Right.
fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think this happens a lot in motherhood, but then also in entrepreneurship. Things
Mm-hmm.
are up. Like things are not gonna go well in parenthood. You're gonna yell at your kids. You're gonna make a mistake. You're gonna do the wrong thing. As an entrepreneur, your launch might not be. Nobody watch your live. Nobody's gonna buy your product. Like those things will happen. And how do we feel the feelings that come
Mm-hmm.
up as they happen and not internalize them as or I'm doing something wrong or something's wrong with me. I think that is key,
Mm-hmm.
being able to know the difference and just being able to work through that.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's watching, if y'all have questions, let us know. But again, if you all just joined, we are here, virtual book tour stop number 2 with Jasmine Chanelle. Celebrate the launch of the book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. And today we are talking about the topic specifically of building your business as a mom and how to beat the overwhelm, the overstimulation, the burnout in the process of doing motherhood and also building your business. Um, Jasmine, what do you think about? Because I saw someone in here a comment about growing the business.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one like decide you want to do it and then start the journey. But then also, what if you're in this other place where you started it and now you want to grow it? Do you think that different set of skills that needs to be had for that with regard to making sure that you stay grounded and not get overwhelmed, or do you feel like it's about the same?
Yeah. So when you're moving to a growth phase of your business, there's going to be a different version of you that has to show up for growth. And so that's why it is important to rest and pace yourself on those other seasons of your business, because when it's time to grow, it's time to grow. And usually, there's a lot more commitment. So during that stage, I tell people to focus on work-life harmony instead of work-life balance. There are going to be times, like if I'm in the middle of a launch, my kids know weeks leading up to it, hey, I'm about to be in launch mode. Everybody sit down with your iPad, eat this pizza. Don't ask me any questions. And then there's other seasons where they know that, oh, mommy's very hands-on. I'm gonna be rolling around on the floor making a fort with them. So being realistic about that work-life harmony, not looking for balance. There's gonna be seasons where, you're all hands on deck for your business, and that's okay. But I think it's important to be aware of that and not skip steps. And so don't go straight into a growth phase when you haven't managed the foundations of your business. You haven't established, those basic habits and routines in your business yet. Because going into growth is just going to exacerbate anything else that was happening on that foundational stage.
I love that. And it reminds me being mindful of how there are seasons
Mm-hmm.
and conditions in our life, whether it's motherhood or in our business, and be flexible and flow with this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it also, I think sometimes, again, for moms specifically, I just think this happens so much in entrepreneurship. There's just, again, going back to the guilt, there's so much guilt. And we think that, our kids are not going to be able to handle this change, or, it's going to harm our kids if one day I'm like
Mm-hmm.
super focused eating them pizza, and then the next day I'm like on the ground playing, and they're going to be, no, our kids are so resilient. And, they are able to flow and go with the changes, realize how resilient they are and how, flexible they can go. And I think it's really just us. And again, speaking to that, we have to be so connected to how we actually feel to be able to manage that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
This flow, or how I have to change things for my business or in motherhood. It can be uncomfortable. It's important to be aware of that within yourself to know then how to cope with it.
Yeah. And I think setting those boundaries are important, especially when you have daughters, because I always think about motherhood from a lens of how do I want motherhood to look for them versus how I saw motherhood modeled to me growing up. It was very sacrificial, struggle, give, pour. And so when we don't set boundaries with our children, they also don't learn the skill of setting boundaries. They don't know what it feels like for mommy to say, nope, I'm doing this right now. You can go do these three things. And so I think going back into that mom guilt part is like we have to also build a little strength to tell the kids
Absolutely.
no.
Absolutely. And again, that speaks to a part in the book where I talk about modeling all throughout the book, because
Mm-hmm.
often the question, how do you teach your children self-regulation skills? I
Mm-hmm.
teach children how to cope with their emotions. How do I teach my children how to, recover from a tantrum or from a disappointment? And what I say is, well, you need to just model those skills for them. Because a lot of times we want to jump to teaching our kids things, but we haven't actually
Yeah.
mastered those skills ourselves. So we want to be able to teach our kids boundaries and how to set boundaries, how to speak up for themselves, stand up for themselves. But if we're afraid to tell the kids no, if we're say, mommy can't do this right now, that's, we need to be able to model these things. And so, yes, it's okay to say no to the kids so that you 1 or 2 hours to the, it's okay to things up when you need to. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I do see a question in here, so I'm gonna ask this question, Jasmine. I want to see what you think, and I'll answer it too. So the question was, how do I do a mini reset when I am in the thick of overwhelm, but I don't want to? And this was from HMV Solution. Again, how do I do a mini reset when I'm in the thick of overwhelm, but I don't want to quit? And I'm assuming she means she doesn't want to quit her business.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes I used to do all the time is take a shower. That was
Ooh,
always a quick reset for me, even if it was only a 10-minute or 5-minute shower. Take a shower, change clothes, or change activities. So if you're super overwhelmed, it's not the time to try to be creative. Those things cannot coexist. Creativity and overwhelm cannot coexist. So I would switch to a task that requires less effort, less brain work, or I would go outside to take a walk, do something that's not related to the business. Now, if it's the kids that are overwhelming me, then I'm going to find something that allows them to be in a different space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love that. I will add to that is in the book, I talk a lot about these core emotions that we feel that then lead us to feel like we're dysregulated. And when I say, I mean completely unable to manage how we're feeling in that moment. And so with each emotion, there is essentially something that needs to be done because our emotions are communicating something to us. It's information. And so when I'm hearing that someone is overwhelmed to the point of feeling like they want to quit, my thought is, how can we scale back a little bit? How can we take something off of your plate? How can we lighten the load? Because overwhelm essentially is there's too much, there's too many, too much going on. We don't have to lighten it
Yeah.
forever, just temporarily. How can we lighten this load for you so that you feel like you can breathe again, so that you can recover? And so
Right.
that could be rest. Like you said, it could be a quick shower. It could be giving your brain a break. It could be taking a few days off from the business. It could be hiring a new level of help.
Yeah.
But what that will lighten your load so that you can recover and come back stronger. So I really also like the idea of thinking about our big emotions, the one that lead us to feel out of control. So again, that's overwhelm, anxiety, depression, like all.
All the mom emotions.
What are these emotions trying to communicate so that we can know what to do? So I hope that helped H&B Solutions. It looks like it did. Does anyone have any other questions? Because I know that we're almost at time. I'm looking through to see if there's any other questions. It looks like everyone's saying good points. Good points were made. I really love this conversation. I just think, there's so many of us, myself included, I'm on of I want books. I want to be full-time entrepreneurship. And it's always just this juggle of how do I do that while also still maintaining my full-time job? Still being a mom, still being there's so many things to juggle. So I just think it's so important to speak to these things so people can feel like realized. There's nothing wrong with you if you feel like you're struggling with trying to go on this journey of entrepreneurship as a mom. Yes, you may feel some overwhelm, but there are some things we can do to ensure that your entire journey of motherhood and entrepreneurship is not just filled with negative, overwhelm, chaos, overstimulation to the point that you want to quit. I know, I'll speak for myself, but I feel like I can say the same for you. We want women who want to seek entrepreneurship to do that. We want women to in their businesses. And I think these issues that sometimes can interfere with our ability to be successful is important so that we know that we're not alone, but then also know what to do about it. Yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, Jasmine, do you have any final thoughts, any other comments, anything else you think it would be helpful to add to this conversation for today?
Yeah, I would love to know how you wrote a book with dollars. Because I feel like that requires a totally different level of focus than just me, what I'm doing. So, how did you write a whole book with $2?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So to speak to that, that's actually a really good question. Thank you for asking that because I think that actually ties together some of the things that we're talking about. Because you're right, writing a book takes so much focus, so much strategy, so much like mental work and executive functioning. And as we have already said with toddlers and small children, they will just take that away from you and it's back. And so I had to do some of the things we talked about today. I had to set the boundary around the time that I was going to write because if I didn't, the book wouldn't get done. So I was very firm with myself and then also my family like, hey, this is the time that I'm going to be writing today. These are the times I'm going to be writing this week. Sometimes it did mean that I didn't get to spend as much family time with them as I do. Or sometimes it meant I had to wake up very early and I had to commitment to myself. And so I think it was a combination of setting the boundaries with myself and my family to ensure that this task got done, but then also being really committed to my goals, which required a
Yeah.
lot of, and with that too, though, it also meant I had to be okay knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be present for
Yeah.
everything. I got to ask for more help in this season. I got to be okay with missing some things because this is important to me. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big, bold statement for women and especially mothers to make. Hey, yes, I'm a mom, but this other project I'm working on or this business that this is important
Yeah.
to me. Often as moms, we get shamed for identifying things that are important to us if it's not our kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, this matters greatly to me. I'm going to protect it. I'm going to protect my time around it. I'm going to protect my energy to ensure that I can give to it. And so, really, again, the boundaries, the discipline, um, communicating with my partner and my kids what I needed.
Good. Good.
Yeah, that was a great question. Great. Anyone else have any other questions, any other thoughts? Um, while if anyone does have questions, again, I'll just say the book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, a practical framework for breaking the cycles of dysregulation and mastering emotions for parents and kids. My publisher told me I got to say the full title because it is very but you gotta throw in the full title. Is available for pre-order now. You can get that on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. You also can go to my website and there is a link for you can buy the book at various vendors. And so I'm so excited for you all to read this book, and I really hope that it helps support your journey as moms and entrepreneurship because I just know that, again, we want you all succeed, and we know the very challenges that will come through this process. And I'm really hopeful that this book can help you to feel grounded, also have the tools and the strategies that you need to cope with and manage overwhelm, overstimulation, regulation, anxiety, worry, guilt, shame, all of that that will come in motherhood and entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Jasmine, thank you so much.
Thank you
I
for
very much
having
appreciate
me.
taking the time to talk with me today. I know our time is very valuable, so I appreciate the conversation.
No problem.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. I will be saving the live if you're part of it, so definitely go back and watch it. And don't forget to pre order your copies of the book. All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.